Very good.
Snow?
It's good to be here.
It is good to be here. I'm not ready for more snow. I'm ready for spring myself. But I would like to thank the LGA for allowing Dominion Energy to come out and present this information on our EAP, our Emergency Action Plan. All right. So this is our presentation for the LGA on our Emergency Action Plan. I would like to introduce myself. Some of you may not even know me or know my name. I'm Clifton Johnson. My role is the Generation Compliance and Project Coordinator for the Roanoke Rapids and Gaston Power Stations. The project coordination part of that, I assist Josh with the shoreline management, and I take over this EAP. I've been with Dominion Energy. Someone asked me earlier, I've been with Dominion Energy for about 6 months now. And when you think, he's only done it for 6 months. But a little background about myself. I've been in power generation for 30 years. And that includes everything that goes with generating electricity, reporting, everything. The majority of my time was spent at Roanoke Valley Energy. And I don't know if you remember, there was a power station over in Weldon, North Carolina, across from the community college. I worked there for 22 years. And I've worked at different power stations, and I'm happy to be here with Dominion now. So, why do we need a plan? Why do we need a plan? Hope is not a plan. You know, I hope the rain stops. That's really not a plan. I hope they know what to do, whoever they is, you know. I hope it doesn't happen on my shift. You know, at the fire station. I hope it doesn't happen on my shift. You know, I hope this all works out. I hope my boat motor starts. You know, that's not a plan. I hope I can find my plan. We need to know where it is. Why do we need a plan? Because the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the state of North Carolina requires us to for significant and high hazard dams. We need a plan because it's a prudent emergency preparedness tool for Dominion Energy. So we need a plan. There's 3 classifications for dams. There's high hazard, significant hazard, and low hazard. Roanoke Rapids and Gaston dams are classified as high hazard. But all that means is dams where failure or misoperation will likely cause loss of human life and major property damage. In North Carolina alone, there's 194 dams classified as high hazard. All that means is there's populated areas around dams. Potential consequences of failure. So we're classified as high hazard because if we have a failure, there's potential consequences. It's not a physical condition of the dam at all. So dams can move from significant to high if land is developed. So if there's a dam out in a very rural area and they start developing neighborhoods around, you know, they could be classified as high hazard and they have to, you know, implement an EAP plan in. So that's kind of the terminology and why we have these things. Why do we need a plan? So we always refer to it as an EAP, Emergency Action Plan. It identifies the potential emergency conditions. It identifies. It specifies pre-planned actions. So it gives us actions that we do. And it minimizes the loss of life and property. That's our goal, is to minimize damage. So why do we need a plan? If you look at this, here's a map. And there's 3 hydroelectric dams on this picture. I do have a point. There's Carr Dam. That's a dam. It backs up and it creates Carr Lake. Gaston Dam is right here. That creates Lake Gaston, and Roanoke Rapids Dam is here, and that creates the Roanoke Rapids Lake. And all of it flows out to the lower Roanoke River. So getting old.
Easy.
So, we'll look at some of these notes. So, the Army Corps of Engineers, they operate and maintain Carr Dam. Dominion Energy, we operate Gaston and Roanoke Rapids Dam, and we maintain those. So, once a week, Carr Dam, the Army Corps of Engineers, they put out a declaration, is what they call it. They tell us how much water they're releasing. And as you can see, it flows into Gaston, Roanoke Rapids, and the river. So basically, they tell us what they're going to release, and we have to manage it through Lake Gaston, the dam, Roanoke Rapids Dam, to the lower Roanoke River. They basically tell us how much water they're releasing. We have to manage that through the lakes and to the river. So,
Question.
yes,
Is there a minimum
yes,
of water
it
that
is.
you're required to release through the dams?
Yes, it
The
is.
Army Corps is, understand, that's big data.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but from what you have from Gaston to the Roanoke Rapids Dam, there's some minimum of regulation of water flow?
It is a minimum that we release, and it actually changes through the seasons.
Okay.
So it's never a set amount that we release. There's a range, and we release that, and it changes with the seasons, and then it can also change with events.
What do you mean by events? Like,
If we have a hurricane,
or a drought?
a drought, anything like that.
Do you establish and let the community know when we have these events? Or?
Well, some of that is sent out, like if we have a lot of rain and there's going to be flash flooding, you get those alarms, but we're ahead of that.
Okay.
So we manage it to not impact the communities. This whole thing about the EAP is when we get to a certain point, it triggers things.
Okay.
And that's when we contact people.
Understand. Okay. Thank
Okay?
you.
Yes.
I'm happy to speak about
Sure.
the flows and water levels. That's not really related to the EAP, because this is an emergency situation, but for normal situations, I'm happy to talk about that with you
Okay.
afterwards.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So if you look, there's a lot of water in this waterway here that goes down. And looking at a map, you can see how much water. But what I did was I created this slide. It's not moving. Uh-oh. I have to do this. So if you look, the Roanoke River, the Staunton River, Dan River, and Smith River, they all flow into Carr Lake. Carr Lake flows into Gaston, Roanoke Rapids, and into the Roanoke Rapids River. So if you look at this, there's some information here. Carr Lake, Army Corps of Engineers maintains at about 302 to 290 mean sea level. Lake Gaston is 200 to 199 mean sea level. And Roanoke Rapids Lake is 131 to 127. And that's what that's what we maintain. So if you look at Carr and Gaston and Roanoke Rapids, if you look at the size of those, that's approximately the amount of water that we're dealing with. So Carr Lake occupies 49,000 acres. Gaston is 20,000 acres. And Roanoke Rapids is 4,600 acres. So if you look at that, Gaston is less than half of Carr Lake. And Roanoke Rapids is a quarter of Gaston. So we manage that flow through there. And when we say mean sea level, does everybody understand what we're getting at there? There we go, it does work. No, it doesn't. It went too far. What is going on?
You need a PowerPoint, Princess.
Yeah. So anyway, our key features of our EAP, it gives us general responsibilities to Dominion Energy, what our responsibilities are when we reach an EAP. It guides Dominion Energy for monitoring and operations of the dam. It provides a notification flow chart that we have. That's how we get the message out, just like you were asking. It tells us who to contact, their numbers and verification of it. And then it gives us some, illustrates some inundation maps on if this much water is released, you know, what happens. So what does the EAP do? It establishes those specific communication procedures. We have procedures in there that it tells us. It outlines those procedures for monitoring the dams. You know, we have to monitor those. It identifies the primary response agencies. It identifies the agencies that we do contact. And it provides responders with information on potential impacts. So all the responders, it'll give you that information on that impact. The EAP design. The plan contents are modeled on FERC guidelines. So FERC gives us guidelines and we model that EAP on that. This FERC model was the basis for current North Carolina dam safety regulations concerning EAP. So they generally give it to every dam and we have to model that. And we have to make sure that we're covering all the information. The summary of responsibilities. The Roanoke Rapids Power Station is where we're located. So our responsibilities, we verify and assess that emergency condition. So our personnel verify and assess that emergency. We notify these emergency management agencies. That's what we do. When we reach that point, we notify. We take corrective action at the station, whether it's just monitoring, whether it's physically doing things, change the way we operate. We're taking corrective action. We issue condition status reports. So we issue what the condition is doing, and then we give you a time frame that we're going to call back and say, hey, if there's no change, we're going to wait till here, we'll call you. And it may be no change then, but we'll update it, and if the condition changes, we update it again. And in the end, our responsibility is to declare termination of the emergency. So when the emergency is over, we declare the emergency is over and report that out. So this is some of the responsibilities for Dominion Energy. And if you look, that's who we notify. We notify Roanoke Rapids, Weldon, Halifax County Emergency Communication Centers. We notify Smurfett West Rock, that's the paper mill in Gaston. We notify Northampton County Emergency Communication Center. We notify the North Carolina Emergency Management. We notify the National Weather Service. So all of y'all have gotten flash flood alarms on your phone. That's kind of where that deals with. We notify the people and they get that information out. They have a flow chart that they go by that triggers information. We notify Dominion Corporate Security. We get them involved. And we also notify the LGA. We're going to notify you, and you can say, hey, they're declaring an emergency, and this is the information. And there's a lot more that we notify, but this is an idea of what we do. And as I said, emergency conditions as needed, we'll make updates to that. So emergency detection. We have instrumentation that indicates levels, temperatures, flows, rainfall. We need to keep up with rainfall and a lot of other things. So it's monitored 24/7 by Dominion and the Army Corps of Engineers. We have piezometers, they measure really groundwater, where, you know, when you dig a well, where that groundwater level is, how saturated the ground is. We measure the magnitude of angle of deformation of structures. We have inclinometers. You know, they measure if anything has moved. Surveillance cameras. We have, I couldn't tell you how many surveillance cameras we have that our operators monitor. They're everywhere around the dam, the entrance, the front of the dam, the back of the dam, sides of the dam, everywhere. So as I mentioned, we have a flow chart. And in that flow chart, it tells us when do we need to issue an EAP. and who to contact. It's got a flow chart. That's those people we contact. So there's emergency classifications. So there's an imminent failure, and that's just a definition they give us, imminent failure. A dam has failed, is failing, or about to fail. And immediate evacuation of downstream areas. That would be catastrophic. There's potential failure, conditions developing that could lead to a failure. Authorities are placed on high alert and updated as the situation unfolds. There's a non-failure that will not lead to failure. It requires investigation and notification to internal and external personnel. So we see something that triggers it, and it's a non-failure. We're going to still go through this EAP process, notify people. It's a non-failure, but we're going to keep an eye on it, and then that triggers other things, inspections that we do. And also a high flow. So if we discharge over 40,000 CFS, flooding is occurring on the river system. So that whole water flow that goes. So if we go over 40,000 CFS, that triggers us. We need to implement our EAP, make these notifications to get the word out. But it's not an apparent threat to the dam at all. So along with that, that's what I was talking about earlier was if we have a hurricane and we get a large amount of rain, it's going to rain, at Carl Lake, it's going to rain at Gaston, it's going to rain at Roanoke Rapids Lake. We have to manage that water level. So if we get to a point where we're releasing that much water, it triggers our EAP.
Just to give you some background information, the average flow through the system on an annual basis is about 8,000 cubic feet per second.
Yeah.
Lately, because of the dry winter we've had, the Corps is releasing about 22 to 3,300 cubic feet per second, so fairly low. The dams are built to pass 320,000 cubic feet per second without hazard. That's what all the spillway gates are, things like that. So 40,000 is a number that was decided upon primarily talking to the Weather Service, because at that point, if 40,000 cubic feet are coming down the river during a flood condition, it starts to flood structures on the river in the lower part of the river. So that's why we activate the
Yes.
high flow.
And really it's notification and alarming people downstream. Hey, this is what we're doing. And he said cubic feet per second. I was going to ask, what's the CFS? Right?
Cubic feet per second.
What is a CFS? People don't really understand
It's a
some
lot of
terms.
water.
Yes.
What's been the historic high levels that have been reached
Wow.
for emergency situations?
So in 1947, the flood of record occurred on the river, and that was before any of the dams were built, and it was 220,000 cubic feet per
I
second.
thought it was 220.
So the 320 number that they use is what they call a probable maximum flood, and that's based on statistical analysis of maximum potential rainfall in the whole basin of the river. So the most we've had since the dams have been built, I think, was right around 60,000.
It's still pretty healthy.
Yeah, and I mean, Cars is a flood control dam, so it has an enormous capacity to absorb floodwaters before they have to start really releasing large quantities of water, which is really good for the Gaston and Rapids.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So the watershed that's north and west of Carr Dam really controls the water more than the watershed for its primary gas and Roanoke Rapids. That really controls the flow.
The whole watershed, because look at all the little creeks, tributary, all the little things that'll run down to those, all three lakes.
Yeah.
So not only do we manage what Carl Lake tells us, we're looking at rainfall, over, several weeks, months. Where's the level now? Is it increasing because of rain? We manage all of that also.
Cliff, are you done with your presentation? We're gonna open up the floor, or you still got?
Not yet.
Okay,
Not yet.
I just didn't wanna.
I can
carry
stop
away-
if you
No,
want.
no, no, I don't wanna get carried away with questions. I wanted to wait till the end.
So what is a CFS? It's 1 cubic feet per second. That's 1 cubic feet per second of water. And it's, you think about it, it's roughly the amount of water it would take to fill a basketball. So think about 40,000 basketballs going down every second.
Every second.
So think about that amount, 40,000 basketballs going down the Roanoke River. So that's when that triggers us, hey, we need to initiate this EAP. And we need to make those phone calls and monitor. So I try to give that a little perspective there. So notification procedures, communication should be concise and accurate. It tells us, be concise and accurate. The communication is in plain English. And a lot of times we ask you to repeat it to those emergency people. We're going to say this, please repeat it back to us that you understand. We're going to notify the time of the incident. That's very important. We're going to establish a callback number and means for verification. So we may call somebody and say, hey, we're declaring this, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to give you this callback number. Call me back at this time and verify. So we want to make sure that it's understood. The information is out. And we're going to ensure direct contact with these agencies 24/7. So a lot of these agencies are manned 24/7, so that's what we do, is we're available to contact them 24/7. That's what we want. The EAP response process, that flow chart guides us. We decide to make a response planning for potential dam emergency a priority. So even though we generate electricity and we provide recreation on the lake, once we do this, we're making that emergency a priority. So it guides us to look at the big picture. We direct and coordinate our personnel, and we contact people. We think through the situation and what is needed. It gives us that flow chart, and it tells us if this, yes, if this, no. And it guides us through that to look at the situation. And it also guides us to act based on the knowledge of the situation at EAP and to protect the downstream residents. It guides us. So the EAP evaluations, inspections. We have inspections and maintenance required by the Dominion Energy staff. We do inspections daily. We do inspections hourly too. We do inspections weekly, monthly, everything. We have preventive maintenance orders that come out that tell us, hey, go look at this. Document what this is. Routine and regular instrumentation monitoring. So they go out and look at those instruments, make sure they're accurate. We do special inspections following significant events. High rainfall, flood, like if they have flooding upstream of us and they're releasing more water. If they call it a flood, it triggers us to do different inspections. A hurricane, if we have a hurricane, everybody's worried, but we're also worried too. We don't know about the water we get. Seismic, we've had seismic events around here. So it instructs us to do these other things, inspections. Also, we do an annual inspection by FERC and Dominion Energy staff. So the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission comes out once a year. And they get with Dominion Energy staff, security, and everyone, and they do a physical inspection. And also a 5-year safety inspection by independent consultation. So we have to get it in independent consultation. Come out, inspect our dams, and these are people that are trained to look at things. We get them, and then they may give us a tip. Hey, I saw this, something new. So we have methods of communication when we initiate this EAP. We have a local landline. We use cell phones. We have satellite phones. And we even do in-person communication. It also includes inundation maps, and these are based on hypothetical conditions by flow and locations. They provide rate, depth, elevation of water, the timing of the wave arrival. If you release some water, there's a wave, and then it's going to go down. So it tells us that time and what the peak water elevation is based on knowledge, the extent of potential flooding, and it provides responders with information. So these emergency responders, it lets them know, hey, we need to, do some road closures. We need to do some evacuations. We need to set up some shelters, because people are going to be displaced. It gives us all that information. And also, this is worst case scenario. So we're doing all these things to prevent these things from happening. So these are some of the inundation maps, and you really have to, it takes a while to look at them, discover them, look, and take all the information in. And if you look, here's the dam, and it may be hard to tell here. There is a black line here, a blue line, and a red line. And at different points, it shows where water will occupy. And this is further down. And as you can see the blue line here, the black line, and then in certain instances, the red line, the water will occupy here. So we take all this information in, and that helps us plan, coordinate, evacuate people if needed, close roads if needed. And this is even further down. And this is, past Weldon. You can see there's the blue line, black line, and red line. And a lot of this is marshy land also down that way. So some of it, and it's a lot. And when I first started looking at them, I'm like, oh my God, what are we looking at? You have to, there's a lot of reading material that goes with it to understand them also. But this just gives you an idea of what we're looking at. So we do EAP updates. So it's updated annually with revisions. So, we do those inspections annually. So if anything comes up and we need to implement it in our EAP plan, that's what we do. We create a revision and it goes out. Everything is distributed to all 40 plan holders. So right now we have 40 plan holders on record. So we have our EAP plan sent out to 40 different agencies. We every 5 years we fully reprint it and send it out to all those agencies to make sure that they have it. Annually, we do an internal test of the plan. So Dominion Energy, we do a test. Hey, we're going to tabletop this. However we decide to do it, we're going to say, hey, let's test this plan. How does it work? And that's what we do. If we make a phone call, we say, hey, this is a test of our EAP. We'll make sure we're doing the right things. And also, it's a living document. So, turnover with agencies, we update that, who the personnel we're contacting, phone numbers, sometimes phone numbers change. We update that, titles, sometimes somebody's working somewhere and their title changes. And companies also, it used to be Champion Paper Mill. But now it's been changed hands how many times? It's Murphy at West Rock now, so we update all that information. The EAP summary, it provides systematic notifications of emergency conditions. There's a system there, and it provides notifications. It outlines procedures for Dominion Energy to follow in an emergency. It tells us the procedures we need to follow. It provides information on the extent of potential impacts from a failure to all the plan holders. So all the plan holders have this information. And it emphasizes the biggest thing is notification, communication, and implementation. The biggest thing is we're calling the right people. We're getting in touch with the right people. We're communicating the right things. Hey, it's a high flow event. And they can look at their EAP and say, this is what we need to do. And we update them. Hey, it was just for a 6-hour period. We released 40,000 CFS. But we need to implement our EAP. And it's implementation of it. It tells us when to implement it and when to terminate it. So, are we prepared? Are you prepared? So that's what we look at. Are we prepared? Are we prepared for worst case scenario? We do our best. Are we prepared for 40,000 CFS? We do. This EAP gives us an outline roadmap to go through all this. So now I can open it up to questions or anything else, any comments? Yes?
Let's say Car Dam has to do 40,000,
Mm-hmm.
okay? How soon does Gaston Dam open to, so it doesn't flood the lake? You know,
Are you with Carr?
no, I'm on Lake Gaston.
Lake Gaston, okay. So Carr releases 40,000. Well, see, they've already told us ahead of time. So we try to maintain it between 300 and 299, so we may be at 299 already. And then we monitor that level. We're monitoring the lake level, all the time. If you think about the amount of water that goes down the Roanoke River, if you look at that, that's moving through the lakes all the time. So we're managing that Gaston Lake. Now, Roanoke Rapids Lake, if you look, it was, 131 to 127. Part of that is trying to manage those lakes, that water flow. If they release that amount and we get it, we manage that. And then if we have to release that 40,000, we implement our EAP. Yes.
Cliff, what is the role of the dams above Carr? If we're having a hurricane thing, does Smith Mountain and whether Philpotts or whatever,
It's
do they
Philpott
reduce
is-
their outflow?
Philpott is a really small one, but well, really the basin starts.
Well, so you've got,
Yeah.
Smith Mountain would be the biggest up above Carr, but you've got Mayo and there's some other lakes in North Carolina as well. They're generally, well, it would all depend on the storm situation. If they're getting a lot of inflow, those are not flood control dams, and so they have a very small capacity to store water. So they couldn't just not let the water go. You wouldn't expect those upper dams to have a huge effect on the amount of water that comes down through the system, because they're just not designed to do that like Carr is. And Gaston has some capacity to store water. If the flood conditions are declared by the Corps, the lake can go up as high as 203. We've got an agreement to try to do our best to not go above 201.5, and I think in the last 5 years we haven't gone above 201. But there's just not a whole lot of storage capacity in Gaston compared to what there is in Carr. So if Carr has to start releasing because they've filled up, then they're gonna let us know ahead of time, and we're gonna start generating. We're gonna start opening spillway gates and passing that water through. And that's I guess what it comes down to, if Carr has to release, let's say 100,000 cubic feet per second because they're filled up, we're gonna be passing that water down through, and so there's gonna be 100,000 cubic feet per second going through the entire river system down below us as well. Because once that storage capacity is full, there's just nowhere else to put that water.
Yes.
So where is the actual measurement taken for the mean level, mean sea level on the lake?
At the lake level, at the dam.
At the dam. So how long does it take for the lake all the way back up to, say, mile marker 31 to rise a foot?
It's gonna vary based on
Right.
a lot of different conditions.
Yeah.
So, say if the lake was stable, we weren't generating at Gaston, and they weren't generating at Carr, and then they started releasing that wave of water, and it wouldn't look like a wave, but it would take about 2 hours for that water level to reach the Gaston Dam.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
He was,
Cliff, are your inundation maps on your website?
no, they're not on the website.
One of the things I found interesting last year when I attended that seminar, was like your breach levels. And so everyone here might be really interested in knowing, you know, the Dominion, that everybody here knows there's a Dominion high water line that we're all familiar with, right, on properties. And so maximum worst case scenario, at that level, you said it was 203, is that right? Is that?
That's the maximum flood elevation for the dam.
And so at what point would water actually breaking over the dam, at what elevation would that be where it was out of control? Is that?
Well, so if we start opening up the floodgates,
right?
It wouldn't reach that maximum elevation unless we reached into that probable maximum flood scenario. And the level in the lake, think of it as like if you've got a tank and you open up a slot on it, as you're putting more water in, the lake is still going to rise even though the same amount of water is going through the system. The dam is safe, but the lake itself may rise above that. And then that's why Dominion purchased, like if you're in the upper portions of the lake, Dominion owns up to 215 MSL, because that's a narrower portion of the lake, and so the potential exists during a catastrophic, you know, this probable maximum flood that water could go out further.
Further than the 203 mark?
That's right, yeah. That's, like I say, catastrophic.
Yeah, catastrophic. Because there was people interested in, I mean, with the LGA got calls and emails about, you know, what if? And so how high could it possibly go, and would our homes be endangered, and all this kind of thing. And those levels are just astronomical once it gets up above 203, where it would end up on property lines, you know.
Yeah, and
So,
Dominion's ownership goes up high enough to ensure that even in a catastrophic thing, homes aren't going to get flooded because they're outside of that.
right.
I think the highest I ever saw it was in '99 when we had Hurricane Floyd.
Yeah.
And I remember on my dock, the water was above my knees. And I have a higher dock. And I also remember the high water mark, the stake that was in there, it reached that. And that was almost catastrophic for the area. So, you know, the likelihood of another one could always happen.
That's right.
But I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah. And one thing to be aware of, particularly if you're up in the creeks, is the roads, those bridges that cross those creeks are constriction points. And so if you've got a lot of local inflow in that creek watershed, the water may go up significantly higher there than it does in the main lake. And that's why, you know, you've all seen those currents flowing through those bridges at times. It can be quite dangerous. And the same thing can happen the exact opposite way. If there's a lot of water coming down the lake, it's going to take a while for that water to get into the creeks because of those constrictions where the bridges are.
Yes.
My original question was going to be how much property, or to what elevation does Dominion own on property for personal property? You said 215?
That's in the upper part of the lake. It's a stair step. It starts at 204 right down the dam, and then it gradually increases as you go up lake.
Because if you live on a steep piece of property, that laterally, that doesn't amount to a whole lot.
Right.
If you live on a very flat piece of property, you could come up to a person's doorstep.
Hopefully not their doorstep.
Yeah.
Our land is supposed to go up, you know.
Hopefully that was never permitted to be
Yeah.
that close, right?
We would be in a really catastrophic situation.
Sounds like y'all might own Shady Shack.
No, it's really not.
I've looked at that, and we got plenty.
Yes.
Live on Jimmy's Creek, up in one of the small coves, and you can stand at the boathouse, and within minutes, you can actually see the water come up the cove,
A shallow
Going
cove,
down the cove.
yes,
What's caused, is that being caused by water coming in or water?
both, both, that's what's managing that water. You know, they let us know what they're sending, and we have to maintain lake levels for flood control, generate electricity, and maintain a minimum flow in the river. So, and you will see it in real shallow coves. You may see the water, you know, you can see the water coming in, and you can see the water going out sometimes. And that's basically a shallower area where you see that. So, yes.
So if they flood the lake up to the high water mark on everybody's property, what would the lake level be?
2 or 3. Well,
I do not know that, and again, that would only.
I live in Pea Hill Creek, if that would help you.
Well, wouldn't that be the 203, or it could be even a little bit more?
They're not
Well,
even good higher.
So 203 is what Dominion, you know, would, that would be the maximum lake
Right, and I know
elevation.
that normally wouldn't cover the docks. But if it
It would.
It's gonna cover some,
It would cover.
please clarify the difference between high water mark and the property boundary.
Mark.
It's not a mark, it's a boundary line.
Right,
The,
right.
the
Yeah.
project boundary.
We don't
Yes.
call it a high water
No.
mark, we call it the project boundary, and that was where Dominion, when they
Purchased that land.
purchased the land, they purchased up to a specific topographic elevation. And so people call that the high water mark. There's no intention for the water to go up that high except during catastrophic, you know, flood events, which we can't say can't happen, but certainly it's not something that anybody expects to happen.
Because normal is 199, is that right?
199 to 200.
200 to 199.
So at times, we've seen in the winters, when we've had a lot of rainfall, short periods of time, we see it pump up, jump to 201, 201 and a half in the last few winters. And there are some structures, boat docks, where the water will get up, you know, and cover the decking on those structures. Now that's because when they were constructed,
Yes.
the contractor or the builder or the homeowner decided, oh, that was fine.
Yes, that is.
When I used to help build docks, normally we built them about 22 inches above main level of the
Well,
water.
What is, see, but they didn't tell you the level is
Yeah, on
X.
that
They
day.
told you it's a range.
Yeah.
Right.
They, tell us real quickly about the Dominion's understanding that you have with the LGA in terms of operation with regard to average lake level.
Well, so our license requires us to keep, when, under normal conditions, so if the Corps of Engineers hasn't declared a flood, then 199 to 200 is normal lake level, and we're required by our license to maintain that, except in emergency conditions, like if there's a drowning downstream and the police department asks us to stop generation to let the river go down. But if flood conditions are declared, our license, our federal license says that the lake can go as high as 203. Dominion back, I think it was in the late 90s, came to what they call the gentleman's agreement. That's just what they called it back then. But it said that Dominion would, to the greatest extent possible, work to keep the lake level below 201.5 during those flood conditions. And I don't like to call it a normal flood condition, but that's the flood condition declared by the Corps. And Carr Dam, during, again, normal flood conditions, will release up to 35,000 cubic feet per second. That's the maximum they'll release. If they fill up, and they've got, you know, enormous capacity to store water. If they fill up, then they've got to start releasing what's coming in, and that's where the water flows could go up to, you know, 60 or 80 or 100 or 200,000 cubic feet per second. But and at that point, Dominion would use every bit of its, of that 200 to 203, because our job is to keep the dams safe. And we're gonna be working with everything we've got to keep those dams safe. But in normal flood conditions, that 35,000 cubic feet per second, we're not gonna go above 201.5.
Yes.
Yeah, like many of the people, I want to follow up to the gentleman's question on the corner over there. Like many of us in here, I've been on the lake since 1970, and so seen it all. Those of us who bought property a long time ago, I'm just speaking for myself. I can't speak for anyone else. But we've always heard about I always heard it was 204, 203, 204. I've always heard it was a high water mark, and that generally controlled where you could clear trees. It generally controlled where you could build a patio, a fire pit, do landscaping and so forth. Recently, I've seen a lot of enforcement that's had to do with. In fact, I brought up in discussions with Dominion the 203, 204 line, and I was actually told, please don't ever mention that again. It is the property line.
Yes.
And stop talking about the 204 line. And if you had built a patio inside on the Dominion property, then you have to remove that. And so that has become a big challenge for people. There's also been people who have been told they have to go back and plant a certain number of trees and a certain number of shrubs back in. I've read the shoreline protection plan, and I can't find where there is a chart which says you have to plant a tree for every 100 square feet or a shrub for every 50 square feet. It seems like there's been a lot of randomness that's been and I apologize if that sounds, I'm
it is
disappointed, but I've just seen so much randomness in terms of this, and I almost think that this probably is outside the scope of this discussion, but any question, any information is appreciated. But I almost would think that the Lake Gaston Association, I would encourage them that maybe we need to have another meeting with the union so that those of us that are property owners can have an understanding of the shoreline. I think it's the shoreline protection plan. That's it, SMP. That would be very, very helpful, because there just seems to be all of a sudden you want to get your dock renovated and you've got to put in 45 trees. And it's like, most people don't even know where their property line is. The Dominion representative doesn't know where the property line is. And I'll finish by saying, for God's sakes, how did you decide it was 45 trees?
Well.
All right, so I'll speak on that behalf. So I'm Josh Simpson, Shoreline Management. We just went through our 5-year review of our shoreline management plan. We actually held 2 public meetings in the same seats you're sitting in today, last September. Should have had plenty of notifications. We also, the LGA participated in that. They also participated in your working group member session, which was held in October, I believe, where we took all the public comments and interacted and took all the feedback back into the SMP. Now, getting back to, I guess, the main point of where the property boundary is determined, it is simply the homeowner's responsibility to obtain a survey. All right. One of the changes we will be implementing is that every time a dock is transferred, when I mean transferred, it's being bought by a new owner, or there is a license agreement required, you will be required to present me with a recent survey covering all encroachments on Dominion Energy's property. All right. They should have never been built. All right. Those encroachments will be removed. All right. Now, to your question regarding trees, we look at satellite survey, and that's actually something we're going to start heavily in this year. I'm going to be working with Timmons as probably an independent contractor on looking at obtaining satellite data and looking at the density of trees. As time goes on, we look at something 1 year and we know that it's been clear cut, turn around it was not clear cut, and then a year later it was clear cut. Somebody's going to be held accountable for that, and we're going to go get it.
Yeah, please don't interpret my question as being aggressive. I've had so many arguments with my neighbors because I've explained to them. I said, it is the property line. is the property. Now, I do think there's still challenges, and I'm sorry I missed those previous meetings. I'm going to be more involved going forward. But, you know, I appreciate the fact that there's satellite information and so forth, and I'm not going to dominate the meeting with this. I just, wow, is it really becoming a challenge for people, though, when they get this done? Because sometimes it was a previous property owner that did this, and all of a sudden, the new property owner is suddenly finding themselves responsible in the process of purchasing the property and transferring the pier, that they're now suddenly responsible for a significant tree planting.
So I want to hit on one more point, we'll get back to the EAP. So to answer that question, so as far as a transfer of service, or transfer of property, we conduct an annual meeting with our real estate agents and contractors around the lakes to go over all new rules, any questions they may have. And like you said, that's a lot of the times we capture a lot of the tree clearing during the transfers of properties. So like you said, they are aware of our rules and they should be applying our rules as well.
And I think that means in March this year.
Correct. We hold it annually every March.
Yeah, I'll look forward to it. And thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, on these EAPs, we had an incident on the lake about a year or two ago where we had that spill up the lake and kind of.
The South Hill Fire.
Yeah.
The South Hill Fire.
The South Hill Fire.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, the stuff came out in the lake and they told us, you know, cautions on catching fish and stuff like that during that period of time. Was an EAP generated for that event, or is it just a different type of event?
That's a different type of emergency. That didn't trigger us on emergency.
Yeah, that was a water quality issue.
Yeah.
So the states were involved with water sampling all down through the creeks and rivers and in the lakes. Louis, you?
Yeah, I can address that. I was heavily involved with that, and both Virginia Department of Environmental and North Carolina were the ones that made those decisions and put those warnings out. Fortunately, the spill never reached the lake, but it took a long time for them to be able to determine that it happened out of
They
caution.
were testing.
So they tested the waters in the creeks and stuff, because some of the water goes into the water system that I think serves Emporia, so more directly than into the lake. So that was put out by both Virginia and North Carolina, not.
Yeah, oh, and I just got a comment. My property comes down through the cove, and I'm like the last house before the drainage pipes come in to the lake. And when I did the survey on my property when I bought it, we mapped it all out where it was down the cove. Well, my property line runs through the middle of the lake now. So I guess over time, you know, I guess it settled or something down the sides. And so the Dominion Energy, the gentleman was here before you. We walked the property and everything else, and I said, well, what about when my property line runs up through the lake here? He says, don't you mess with that. He said, it might go back down, and I showed him where the stakes were, where I had it surveyed and everything else. He said, you don't touch that. You do other things up there on the bank, but you're not gonna mess with that property line. I said, okay.
Yes.
We bought our house 2.5 years, almost 3 years back. We got everything we needed as far as the dock was already there, it disappeared. We've got probably 5 or 6 trees in our rear yard. Some of them go down below the water line type thing. Do I have to worry about somebody coming back against me in 5 years saying you need more trees?
No.
Oh, no.
Well, that's kind of
What we're.
my concern is, I mean, I understand if I have to sell the house at some point, then the new buyer then has to live by the rules. And I'm hoping everything's passed by the rules now, even before then.
So when we come out, we take pictures of the property boundary, where the property boundary starts and ends, take good visual evidence of what's there prior to. If we don't have any conflicting evidence, you know, to go after an individual for what they've done.
I think everything's back, and it's been back. I'm just worried about future rule changes.
No. Yes, sir.
This last one, all I'm gonna say is, if you have a question about it and you don't understand what the paperwork says, email Josh. He'll email you back. He will come out personally and he will tell you what it is today. He's been great to deal with, and if you have a question, just email him. It may take him a week or two, depending on how busy he is, but he will respond to you and he will give you an answer. And you don't have to worry about what your neighbor says is the rule or what somebody else says is the rule.
Yes.
You can say, Josh said. And until Josh retires, it's Josh said.
Reach out to you.
All right, that's all I got.
Yeah.
So everyone, I just want to interject real quick. I don't want to get too carried away with SMP and shoreline management so much, taken away from the EAP, which is what the meeting is really about. The LGA is going to host an SMP meeting this summer at the annual meeting that we have. So just keep an eye out for that if you have more questions about that. But I would like to stay on point if we could. So I'd appreciate it. I just got a quick question. I came across an article a few weeks ago in Apple News that it caught my eye about dams and construction and inspections. And I just wanted to run this by y'all. So there's an association, I guess, tied to Virginia Tech. It's American Safe Dams Organization, and they're using satellite technology to take measurements on the elevations of dams, the actual dam structure itself, and they're measuring the elevations annually to see if they're changing, and so it's part of the inspections they do all across the country. So it caught my eye because the Roanoke Rapids Dam was mentioned in the article, and over a period of years, they've been taking measurements with satellite technology, and they said in the article that it was changing or dropping about 7 millimeters a year, which is roughly about a quarter inch, a little bit more than a quarter inch for those of you who don't know. And so I was curious if y'all are aware of that. I know Dominion was notified, and I know what their response was, but I was wondering if y'all do other inspections that also measure elevations and cross-check that kind of data and that technology.
Yeah, and I'm happy to speak to that. And some of you I heard it on public radio just this week. They were talking about this particular article, but Dominion surveys the Roanoke Rapids Dam every month with very high fidelity surveying systems to track any movements in that dam. They do the same thing with Gaston as well. Roanoke Rapids is a concrete dam. It's built on bedrock, so there's very little possibility that it is sinking unless the bedrock itself is sinking, which with geological activity, there could be a possibility, I suppose. But our surveying accuracy is down to the millimeter level. They even track the movement of the dam seasonally, because as the dam warms up in the summertime, it expands, and they can track that with this survey. So it's that type of precision that they're getting out of that. We have no indication that the dam is sinking, and we would not expect a concrete dam to sink, especially if it's on bedrock. Gaston Dam, the powerhouse section and the spillway, that's concrete, that's also set on bedrock as well. So we certainly are interested in this report and the idea of using satellites to track dam movement, but we use surveyors with surveying equipment set at certain points that were set back when the dam was built. So we feel like we've got a very accurate track of what the dam has done over those since 1954.
Thank you.
Any questions about that, or Dominion? You're going to be seeing some construction on the dams in the next couple of years. Dominion is actually going to be they call it anchoring, where we're gonna drill through the dam and put anchors into the bedrock, and then there's these big cables that come up through the concrete, and those are gonna be hydraulically tightened to essentially stitch the dam down to the bedrock.
Awesome.
Is an extra measure to increase the stability measure on the dam.
South Carolina.
What do you call that process?
They call it dam anchoring. It's post-tensioned anchors is what, that's what they're using. And they'll have those scattered, spaced along the whole of the concrete sections of the dam.
That's strictly as a preventative.
That's right. So the FERC changed the way computations are done when it comes to figuring out what they call safety factor, the factor of safety for the stability of the dam. And they, about 4 or 5 years ago, they changed what some of the formula basically that you use to compute that to make it more conservative. And when we do that, the factor of safety on the dams is not as high as FERC would want it to be. And so that's why we're doing this anchoring project.
Wow.
But the dams have not shown any indication, since they were built, that they're anything but stable.
And it's new technology, really. They were built in '54.
Right.
And this is, FERC says, hey, we'd like to implement this. We're going to do it. So that goes along with it. New technology. We'll roll right along with it.
Something else I found interesting in the seminar that caught my attention really was what the dams are built to really handle. When you talk about cubic feet per second and water movement and what they actually do every day and how those numbers relate, it was astronomical to what the dams are really built to handle, and so well above, things that normally occur, or even worst case conditions of, catastrophic hurricane or Cat 5 or something, or flooding, from upstream or what have you. But I don't know if you wanted to touch on some of those numbers and what the dams were built to handle and what they can do.
Yeah, I did touch on it a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, the dams are built to pass what they call the probable maximum flood. And that's a statistical analysis of the entire watershed that says if the maximum rainfall fell on the watershed, how much water would come down through the system. And that's right at about 320,000 cubic feet per second. And so the dams are built to pass that level of flood without hazarding the dam. Those giant spillway gates would all be open. They'd be generating. So the idea is that we don't want the dam to overflow. The water is supposed to go through the floodgates.
Right.
And those are designed to handle all that. And that's another project that's going on right now at Roanoke Rapids, is that the hinges on those gates have reached end of life, and so we've started the process of replacing those hinges. And those, you think about a gate that's holding back that much water, the hinge pins are about that big in diameter, and about that long. So they're big pieces of metal.
Can't get them on Amazon or Home Depot,
Yeah.
right?
Can't run Lowe's and
Right.
Yeah, did you have a question?
Just a quick question, what's expected lifespan of the dam?
That's a hard
Yes.
thing.
Yeah,
It's
I hope it doesn't happen on my shift.
There you go.
I've never seen
From my lifetime, right?
the expected life.
The reason
was.
I ask is because out west, and I don't know if it's tied to ecological problems or not, but they've been destroying some dams on rivers too.
Yeah, Northern California they did, and that was more ecological.
It's
Yeah.
for allowing passage of migratory
Yeah.
fish.
Right. Yeah, those dam removals have nothing to do with the lifespan of the dam. That is more related to
Ecological situation.
how much they were looking at the economics of versus the ecological benefits. How much is this dam providing economically to the state in regards to power generated and irrigation water and things like that, versus how much ecological benefit would the river provide if we took the dam out?
Yes.
If EAP is instituted for maximum flow above that, how far east down the Roanoke River towards Albemarle Sound are people notified as far as?
All the way.
All
All
the
the
way
way to the coast.
All the way down to the.
So your process will actually notify?
Yes, it gives us that information, those counties, Bertie, you know,
All the way to
Washington
the
County,
Albemarle
all of them,
Sound.
all the way down. We notify them.
How about the people that, like the farmers, because I know if you have maximum flow, it affects on the farmers down there. So I'm
Yes.
assuming when this information goes out to the counties, they notify the
Yes,
farmers, so forth.
the same way we have a flow chart that we send information out, when they receive that, they have a flow chart who they contact.
Okay.
The National Weather Service, you know, is involved with that heavily. So our EAP tells us who we contact. And then these emergency responders, they have people they contact to get the information out. That way, it's not all on us. We'd be on the phone the whole time instead of trying to manage.
Walking down the river, the
Yeah.
information. Okay.
Yes, yes, so we wouldn't, if we had to contact everybody, you know, we'd be on the phone the whole time, we wouldn't even be able to manage the emergency. So it's basically set up just like the federal, like the NIMS type. You know, you contact these people, they contact these, all the way down. Yes?
This may be a naive question, but is bridge stability factored into the summary, like Eaton's Ferry 85? Are any of those under threat of erosion during one of these events?
Yes, it is. And that's more along with the DOT.
Right.
They know the integrity of those and how much they can handle. And like with road closures, if they see that, if we tell them the CFS is this, they know right away, we're gonna trigger, we're gonna, you know, close this bridge. Yes.
I was gonna say, so we've talked about, or heard a lot about weather events kind of
Yes.
affecting us, but what about like a failure at Car Lake Dam?
Yes.
Right, so is that factored into our
Yes.
EAPs here?
Yeah, they
If you're up
notify.
at Gaston, I mean, you know, God forbid if Gaston goes, it's the people downstream who are gonna
Yeah.
get hit the worst, right?
We-
So we're downstream of Car Dam. You know,
Yes,
what's the
exactly.
communication from them if that didn't go?
So last year, we actually participated in CAR's EAP. They had a seminar, I think they put on, first one we've attended in quite a while, but we actually participated in one last spring or summer. So like I said, they would initiate their EAP, we would be in communication with our EAP. I do want to state though, we started talking about the seminar, so we had great participation from everybody downstream. So like you said, you had your Bertie County Emergency Management, Williamston Emergency Management, Northampton, so all these counties came, Highway Patrol was there, we had
EMS.
National Weather Service, I mean, we had 40 or
EMS
50.
people, Army Corps was there.
You had Army Corps, we even had a FERC representative there. We had a great turnout for our EAP. We actually, so part of that 5-year review process, you do the tabletop functional. We kind of run through a presentation like this. Actually, we had a contractor, you know, put it on as well. But during that process, after lunch, we are engaged into a actual hands-on scenario based. So
Like a mock-up.
yeah, mock-up. So I think if anything comes out of that training, it's that mock-up training with everybody in the room that's talking and collaborating and work. Hey, something didn't quite work, or hey, let's work on this. That's where these, you know, these interactions came into play. So like I said, we had a great experience with that, and we do that every 5 years with everybody downstream. Like I said, we enjoyed our interaction with CAR as well.
And one thing I'll say is, when interacting with their EAP, if they see a scenario where they see like something leaking by, they're going to contact us. We're releasing this amount of water. We're going to try to manage this so it doesn't become a failure. So they'll contact, I mean, we get notified then, you know, hey, they're releasing, you know, 40,000 now.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the main event that you have to be concerned about is not a weather-related event as much as like a seismic event.
Well,
You know,
weather related too now, because
I mean,
when it rains,
sure.
you know.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, the really catastrophic event
Oh,
would
yeah.
probably be
Yeah.
something more seismic related.
Oh, yeah.
A big crack appears in the car dam, right, and, you know, what then?
You shouldn't even be talking about that, Bob.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, we're talking about.
Make sure your boat motor starts. That's
Yeah. So you're talking about Army Corps of Engineers, so they're doing those same inspections, they're doing all those things that we do too. And if they see something, you know, that activates it then, and they try to manage it before it becomes catastrophic. I guess that's what they manage it before.
And our operators at our dam and our what they call the operations centers, which are down in Richmond, or up in Richmond, that plan all the generation, things like that. They're in regular communications with the Corps of Engineers at Car Dam. And when I say regular, I mean daily, multiple times.
Yes.
So we're communications between the Corps of Engineers and Dominion is very robust.
Something that happened last year, it was kind of interesting. There was a day where we had a tremendous amount of rainfall. And the lake levels were, you know, on the higher edge, you know, 200 or so. And it's just a typical day, I mean, to stay in the house and do something else. And I start getting texts and some calls about, I got friends over in Songbird Creek and, you know, hey, and they're texting pictures of docks underwater. And it's like, what's going on with the lake? You know, what's the situation? Are we flooding? And, you know, they're all excited. And my first thought was, I looked at it and I said, you know, my docks, you know, still got another 1.5 feet, 2 foot to go. And I thought, well, all these docks are built supposedly within a certain tolerance, you know, of elevation. And I said, well, your dock must be an awful lot lower than mine. And she's like, no, they're all the same. I was like, okay. So,
also, one thing I can say is, you know, it'll rain in one area. You drive 15, 20 minutes, it's not raining.
Right.
So they may be getting a lot more rain in that concentrated area.
That's exactly what happened.
So what turns out is, Songbird Creek gets a tremendous amount of runoff, but they have a small culvert to go to the main lake. So that water can raise a lot faster over there than what it can be distributed to the main lakes. And so it takes a while for those elevations to level out. And so I called Josh right away, and he took my call gratefully. And I was like, "You getting as many calls as I'm getting?" He's like, "Oh yeah." And he's like, "Everything's cool, you know. Just tell everybody to relax." I was like, "Okay." So I let some people know that were contacting me, and within a half hour or 45 minutes or so, everything was cool, right? So then I start getting texts and calls like, "Oh my God, thank you so much. I don't know what you did to the lake. It worked. I waved my magic wand over the lake."
So you took credit for it. I did my job.
Oh my God, it was so fun. So anyway, that happens on the lake.
It does.
In creeks.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to give thanks to like the emergency response folks that if the creeks are backing up, that makes your boats float away, the boats float into the creek, into the bridges. That stops all water flow out to Main Lake. And that's where it can really get bad. And so our emergency folks that are around, like all the fire departments, they're phenomenal in that area.
You need to tie your boats and jet skis up. Back when Floyd hit, the Royal Lake and Floyd hit, there was more boats sitting out in the main lake than jet skis.
I'll say this, last summer, at the end of June, 1st of July, I don't know if y'all remember, we had a lot of rain, heavy rain events. I was over in Roxborough and the Mayo Lake and the Hyco Lake. On Hyco Lake, I kind of compare it to Lake Gaston. It's highly populated recreational lake. They had docks become loose and float away. And they actually, one of them blocked one of the bridges, you know, so that was, you know, constricting flow there too.
Wow.
And, but yeah, you know, flooding and water can be very powerful. So. That's why we have this EAP. That's why we try to make sure we're prepared.
Do we have any other questions? We want to try to wrap this up a little bit. I want to thank all our Dominion friends for being here.